What's it like for employees who are navigating the workplace with a disability or chronic health condition?
Well, I'll start by sharing my story because I think it'll help kind of paint the picture. I myself, as I'm alluded to, have dealt with chronic illness, which I now consider to be a disability. I didn't realize it at the time. And when I first entered the workplace, I had an IV in my arm, which I had for about 3 years. And I was hooked up to antibiotics for 8 hours a day, every single
Wow. Oh my goodness.
and hooked up to an IV pole. So that's talk about a safety concern.
Yeah.
But I saw firsthand just how challenging it was to navigate the process of telling my boss. I remember getting the job and truthfully being terrified of telling them that I had an IV. I thought, they're going to rescind my offer or,
Mm,
I'm never going to get to move up in this career. And unfortunately, I ended up in a company and career that wasn't right for me and wasn't accepting of this situation. But now I've obviously have dedicated my life to helping people like me. But um, it's a very uncomfortable process. And my story is not unique. For people with chronic illnesses and disabilities, right now, the process, as I mentioned, is unsafe. And it involves you typically having to go to your manager, or if you're lucky, your HR department, and raising your hand and saying, I'm someone with a disability and I need support or I need an accommodation. And now you've outed yourself and now you could potentially face discrimination. And that's a very scary process for people. And it's why most people don't disclose. Um, and so today, working with a disability often involves you being silent and you having to suffer through that silence because you're too scared to say anything and potentially impact your career.
Well, on the flip side of all that, what are some of the common challenges for organizations working to grant reasonable accommodations? I can't imagine it's an easy process to keep up with.
It's not. And I think part of that is just because the law, the ADA, is very, very gray. It's one of the most complex. It's a great piece of legislation. It's really helped support the disability community, but it's pretty outdated. And so at this point, right now, it's just very gray. And the word reasonable, I'm glad you put that in there. Who knows what is reasonable, right?
Right,
It's
right.
become this very unreasonable question, for lack of better words. And I think employers today are facing significant challenges in managing this process. And it's actually illegal to store any protected health information, PHI, inside of your HR systems or your people systems. And so most companies are relying on these very packed together methods of managing this process. So they're using sticky notes and spreadsheets to actually even piece together the accommodations process. So that's one big challenge. And then the other big challenge for companies is the legal issues. Disabilities now become the number one cause of discrimination lawsuits for companies. And the cost is really too great to ignore. In 2022, we saw record high amount of disability employment, but at the same time, we're also seeing record high lawsuits in correlation. And so I think more people than ever are fighting back. And so companies need to be aware of this and also be staying up to date on both federal and state regulations because it is actually state dependent. And I think a lot of companies have this misconception that we have to be a huge organization in order to comply with the ADA. This doesn't apply to me. But in reality, the ADA applies to all companies with 15 employees or more. And in many states, it's actually 5 employees. And in some states, it's as low as 1 employee that you could have to comply with the ADA, which
Wow.
would, I guess, be compliant or, accommodating yourself. But in this case, I think small businesses need to be aware of this and need to be thinking about this. You might think this doesn't apply to me, but it does.
We talk about on this show all the time that to have a really good uh, safety program in your organization, it can't just be checklists. It has to be cultural. Part of our organization is that we absolutely respect people's privacy and we want to make it an inclusive environment that people with disabilities feel comfortable coming here and don't have to share anything. And that's got to come from the top down. The leaders of the organization have to walk the walk, talk the talk. I mean, all that. And if they don't, it's not going to work. So I think making sure that key leaders in the organization talk about this, explain it. You said it earlier, educate. Then people go, yeah, It's okay that I have no idea what's wrong with Hannah. That's totally fine. But I'm here to work with her and make this as a comfortable place as possible.
Putting the work in the disability space is something I tell my friends to do, my parents even. A lot of it needs to be your work, going out there, figuring out who are thought leaders, following them, adding them into your social media feeds, and educating yourself because it's not always up to disabled people to educate non-disabled people. And I hope anyone listening to this doesn't see that as a bad thing, but hopefully an exciting thing where you can learn about a new population that needs support and not a new, but new to you maybe. So hopefully that helps.
Absolutely. And you're right. Like, we're in this together. It should not rest on the shoulders of the disabled person to have to deal with everything.